here on a completely different dial, and we can see whether or not we want to overheat the switch or not. Welcome back everybody, where we're going to play the Class 66 introduction for the Great Western Express in Train Sim World. This technically is a 5-minute mission of all things. We'll see if that's true, but it is a 500-point AP score. So let's get into this.
This is a DBS Class 66 diesel locomotive, nicknamed Shed because of how it looks. This locomotive used to haul aggregates up and down the Great Western Main Line. Today, you're going to learn how to take control of this powerful freight locomotive, start it up, get it moving, and then bring it to a stop. Start by climbing aboard the locomotive. Enter through the cab door in front of you.
So just like all the other ones, we are going to be going inside the engine and we will be driving it down the road again. But yeah, so the Shed, as they say, or they like to call it here, it literally is a double cab, but both sides involve driving the train. One side more so than the other. Let's go ahead and hop in.
Take a look around, and when you're ready, have a seat in the driver's chair.
This is the only one without a staircase, so why they, of all times now, they had to give me nothing but no stairs and tell me to use the ladder. But I guess we're going to use the ladder for this one. That is fine. We'll shut the door out here. And it's kind of neat. There's a little mini hallway. I don't quite understand why the Sheds need a mini hallway. But if you go down to the other side, the same deal. But there's also another door you can't even get back into because that's where the engine room is, of all things. The Sheds also have, just like your American Freight, also have fuse cabinets. The first thing we probably should do is turn on the lighting in here. What they want me to do is sit in the seat and then eventually go through all of these things for starting up the engine. But we're going to actually turn on the actual cab lights, and you can find those cab lights right here on the wall of your engine. This will help us to see what's actually in the fuse cabinet, and you'll see there's things like heaters. The parking brake actually comes with a fuse for that. The gen field and the auxiliary gen fuse also have fuses, and ironically there's no other fuse in this cabinet but those few things. Don't know if that's actually the way it's supposed to be. On the opposite side we have the hot plate. So they also have fuses, which is interesting how it is lined up here. The hot plates, the fuses apparently are already set on, while we also have window heaters, the fuel gauges, the ETCS 110 volt supply. That's kind of an important deal. We also have a air dryer, keep that in mind, tail lights, radio, etc., cabinet lights. So apparently there's a fuse for the cabinet light itself, but where is that light? I don't even know. We have a fire detection isolate. We want to kind of keep that unisolated. We also have, here's our DSP isolation for our wonderful foot pedal down there. That's going to be this switch right here. So we will be turning that in a few minutes. Over here we have turning on the engine essentially for the fuel injection switch. We have the cut in and cut out system here. And up on the top we have control fuses for the variety of things that are listed under control there. And then over here we also have a turbo switch, which is interestingly bolted down, and they won't let us unbolt that at all. It says when cycling any circuit breaker on this panel, open computer control breaker first, close computer control breaker last of all things. The turbo loop pump will not run with the computer control breaker off.
First, you need to get the engine up and running. Start by turning the master key on.
If you played anything in American Freight, you will know the master key is basically the same thing as a reverser. In fact, they call it a reverser here. So we're going to stick that in there.
Now get the engine started. Set the engine run switch, generator field switch, and the control and fuel pump switch all to on.
The nice thing about the Sheds is it reminds me a lot of American Freight, because a lot about American Freight does this very similar thing. In this case, it has one extra switch. It has the start stop isolate switch here rather than the American Freight where it normally is on the back wall back there. So the start stop isolate is already, we're just going to leave that alone for now. They just wanted to turn the engine run switch to on, turn the gen field switch to on, and also control and fuel pump switch to on.
There you go. Use the engine start button on the desk, then wait for the engine to get running and set the isolation switch to run.
So the start button for the engine is located here. This is our engine start button. We have an engine stop button, completely different number for that as well. So let's go ahead and hit the engine startup button. So you'll notice it has a little beeping back there in the engine, and then we want to change our isolate to essentially run.
This locomotive uses a PBL braking system. Before before we go anywhere, we need to run a quick brake test. First, hold the auto brake handle in the release position until the brake pipe control needle in front of you reaches 5. That means the brakes are completely released.
This may be the first time they actually made us do a brake test of the system, which is very interesting. The needle she's talking about is the brake pipe control. So right now it's set at 0. If we just zoom in a little bit here, you can see we have an airflow indicator. We also have our bogey 1 and bogey 2 bar system, as well as our master reserve system that happens to be on the left here. And then I can't really see there. I think it says brake pipe on the right, but the brake pipe isn't set to that. It says it's set to 7, so I'm not sure which one of that is set to 7 because that doesn't look right to me. Maybe it's set to some other number, but that's okay. We'll worry about that one later. To set this, we need to pull the automatic brake, and we can't just like hold it like this. It doesn't work. And you'll notice that it activates the airflow indicator as well as moving the bars there too. So we actually have to hold it down and wait extra patiently for this number to go all the way up to number 5.
The brakes now need charging, so a full application is needed. This time, hold the auto brake handle in the apply position until the brake pipe control needle is at 3.
So now that we can see what's going on in here a little bit here, our bogey now is set to 0, and what we have to do is we actually have to charge up our brake cylinder. So we're going to actually do exactly what she said and move this to apply until this goes down to roughly 3.
It looks as though the brakes are working as they should. All you need to do now is fully release the brakes again, so we can get moving.
So she's actually referring to this here, even though this is very similar. Both of these are set to 3 or 4, roughly. So we're going to go ahead and release the brakes itself. We also have a direct brake. Think of this as a parking brake almost. If we put this to apply, it basically locks down the brake. We're going to do that just so we don't accidentally roll away. Let us go ahead and release the brakes and just release it completely.
Time to get moving. Turn the headlights and marker lights on.
You'll also notice actually before we go on, by the way, the DSD isolation is on, the AWS isolation is on. These two switches do help us with that. If I just kind of hop out of the seat, I cannot, she won't let me do that. The one right below this one, it says brake test. The other one says wheel slip. The other one says general fault. And then fire detection system. And then we also have over here is our headlight control. You can actually see the way the headlights are set up. In order to set up the headlights themselves, we have to come up to the headlight marker light button. It is daytime, so we need to turn this to day mode. We have, by the way, a nighttime running mode, a yard work running mode, and a daytime running mode. We're going to set it to daytime for the time being.
Put the train in forwards so we're ready to get moving. Using the reverser, set the handle into forward.
Before we even go forward here, we're going to go to camera 9 here for a second. You'll notice I'm actually sitting in a yard here, but then I pop out onto the main track, and then there's no yard after that, whereas the main yard is way out there. Where I am, I'm actually located at West Drayton, and I'm actually heading in the direction of Ivor. So very important there, with the headlight, we are not actually driving on a yard. We're not doing any kind of yard work. So that's why we have to put this in daytime running mode. If we look over here, you can see the lights light up properly for daytime running mode. Very helpful for there. And also, by the way, since we're here, maximum speed 75 miles per hour. We can't ever exceed that speed using a shed or we break the engine. Going back up here, we also have a set of tail lights. If I take the outside camera real quick, I'm currently on camera 3. The front of my engine is here. You can see the lights are on properly. If I go to the back of my engine, there is no tail lights. And one of the reasons we will want to turn on the tail light there, so that way at least other cars behind us can see that we're actually there. If we're connected with other rail cars, that might be a different circumstance. And we also want to turn on the instrument lights, which happens to be right next to us too. And that will power up our instrument lights here. If we need to change the dimmer, we can do that via this little switch here. From there, we have a window demister up here as well. We also have our brake test button, which was very interesting that she didn't tell me to flip the switch down to test mode and then test the brake and then flip it back up to service mode. Whatever on her part right there. Next up, she did say to put it in forward, so we're going to do that.
Now you need to release the last of the brakes, the parking brake.
So you'll notice it says the parking brake is on, and how you know it's on is that it actually has this little symbol here. Once I press this button, it will...
Nearly there. Now apply some power and get this train moving. ease the throttle handle into notch 1.
We also have a couple other things, such as the pass single hit. This is going to be kind of important as we go along. We'll save that for another day. But in the meantime, there is a couple weird, bizarre things about this train, which is interesting. There is a hot plate that I can turn high, medium, and low. We're just going to turn it down to low there. We have the windscreen wiper for the right side, the windscreen wiper for the left. Way down here is a fan for fresh air. We will actually get air going in here. And then we can actually turn the fan to high speed or low speed. In fact, if we can get up, which we still cannot get up, but we can move our camera to the different instrumental panels. We also have the ability to see the electro-motive screen, and that tells us some interesting information as well. We're just going to go ahead and hit F4 for the... Actually, we're going to hit next for a second. It's not going to let me go anywhere with next, so we're just going to go F4. That will take us back into the main menu, and we can actually use different things like the data meters. We can look at unit information. For the sake of this, we'll click unit information here. I want to select that. There it goes. You can actually see our train is the unit DBS 236. EM 2000, etc., etc., and it tells you how much fuel and whatnot it's gotten here. And it's really cool that you can see this stuff on the screen. We're actually mostly using it for slow speed control. For whatever reason, there is a camera to see this, and I probably should have went here first, but that is okay. We have a camera that takes us back to the main panel there, a camera that takes us over here, so this is even easier to see all these switches here. We have a camera that goes back into the fuse boxes. One of the ones that we do want to turn, actually two of the ones that we want to turn on is DSD isolate. We want to turn that on unisolated for warning devices, so to speak. And also the same thing for 24 volt supply fuse, which will turn on the AWS. It's the only reason I left the cabinet open, folks. This will take you to the next cabinet and down into the second man seat, where we can actually much more clearly see the fan, and we can even see the heater speed here on a completely different dial, and we can see whether or not we want to overheat the switch or not. Now, it does say that if you do overheat it, the switch will get reset, so very important there. We actually have a driver safety device right in here for the second man, which is really interesting. A horn there for the second man, and what appears to be a windscreen. I can't read that at all. It says something about dosing. I can't get up to read that, so we'll have to come back to another day for that one. We're setting this to notch 1 to 3, so let's just go ahead and do notch 1 for a second. Reach a minimum speed of 10 miles an hour. The only reason I'm not moving, by the way, is because I left my parking brake, the real parking brake, on. So we're going to turn off that direct apply brake, and that should set me up, and we should be able to start moving once the brake cylinder goes down to 0. In the meantime, we also have a hazard button, in case you're wondering where that is. That will cause the light to blink, and it will give us some blinky light there. We have the AWS acknowledgement here. We have the speed control set up in this area. We also have a train length counter, as well as, of course, the emergency brake valve. In case you need to contact Singler, you have a phone right up in here. Obviously, no one's going to be contacted because this is just a demo, and we're going to go ahead and move this up to throttle 3 so we can go a little bit faster.
I think this is fast enough for now. To maintain our current speed, set the throttle handle back to idle.
Now, it's funny that they say manage your speed, use the throttle and brake handle to manage your speed. And what they're getting at is also activate this here. So if you hit apply, it will set a certain amount of brake pressure, and that will slow your train down. And then in order to release it, you do have to pull it back and release that brake handle until that completely goes down to 0. You can kind of release it once it drops down. Eventually it'll drop down on its own. But if you notice what happened to my train, it does slow down quite a bit to do that. And the automatic brake here can be activated actually with these two keys here that I'm pressing, the semicolon and the apostrophe. Those are the two keys that will activate this particular button here. Whereas the direct brake there is actually used by the bracket, and the bracket will activate the direct brake, and which is kind of interesting to kind of know the difference there.
That's it. Let's bring the train to a gradual stop. Using the auto brake handle in the apply position again, get the brake pipe control needle in front of you to around 4 to apply a gentle application, and then let the brakes do the rest.
So I can't quite figure out why that's the case, but I don't know why they want me to use this over that, but that is okay, whatever they want, right? So let's go ahead and get this to stop here, because this is where we want to slow our train down and make a complete stop. And with this mission, we are done with the Class 66 introduction. Class 66 is going to be very interesting, very different compared to the 166 or even the HST. So folks, if you want to see how we drive the Class 66 and what we're going to be doing with it, definitely stay tuned for the next episode and we will come right back at you with this. In the meantime, definitely like, subscribe, leave me comments, and we will continue on coming soon. Stay tuned, guys. Bye. Alright folks, so that was very interesting. I tried to change my engine and the game didn't let me. Normally you could flip from the front engine to the back engine, and for whatever reason this scenario is not doing it. I am totally shocked right now, it's not letting me. What I did do in the meantime, I did set this up for